I'm with Deputy Gollop again in sunny Guernsey, following a meeting I had with the Constable de Moignon for St Peter Port and Lester.
Deputy Lester Carapel, who's also Deputy Lester Carapel, has many roles. He's a scrutineer, a poet, a performer, a builder, but he is also not just an elected deputy for St Peter Port, he is a douzenaire, in a sense a town councillor, if you use English rather than...
And his brother's in the States as well?
Yes, Deputy Laurie Carapel sits with me on the Legislation Select Committee. He sits on the Commerce and Employment Department, and he's Leicester's younger brother and represents and lives in the Vale parish, and until the new year he was senior constable of the Vale, which is one of Guernsey's largest parishes and has nearly 10,000 people living within its borders.
I had a very interesting interview with them. Somewhat disappointingly for me, they were suggesting, when I asked them what they thought was best for Jersey, they said, well, they prefer to see, if they would express a view, basically that constables should stay in the States. Does that surprise you?
Not really, because Mr. Dennis de Moignon has had a new approach to the job. He's a hard worker, and he's been very proactive in looking at improving the town in many diverse areas, such as seating, disability rights, the cemeteries, nature reserves, building projects. But he can see that there is occasionally a difference of opinion between the bigger estates and the parishes, and the argument would be that if the parishes had specific representation, whether it was constables or douzaine representatives, the link would be stronger. Guernsey's had that though, and abolished it by 2004. The problem with the parochial representation was the public were not giving them a widespread mandate. They were being elected on 5% of the vote. They were overly representative of middle-aged men, and they were not perceived to be politicians. And also, if we went back to having 10 constables or 10 douzaine representatives in our states, the town would be underrepresented compared to the country parishes. And I'm not sure of my views on Jersey. I think the parochial culture in Jersey is possibly even stronger than in Guernsey, because you have a parochial police system. Guernsey abolished it in 1918, and there are other differences with welfare historically. And you certainly have larger parish halls. But your parish system is very much part of the community, and I could accept the 12 constables as being entitled to be states members in the old days when you had 53 members. But I think if there is this determination to reduce the number of elected representatives to 42 or less, then you cannot accept the constables as being entitled to be there as of right, because the election of constables undermines the democratic system in Jersey for a number of reasons. Firstly, a constable lost his seat in St Brellard's, who we in Guernsey thought was a very good chap, but it was perceived that his defeat was because he held a ministerial portfolio, and the popular reaction to that was that a constable couldn't serve two masters. If therefore you are excluding the 12 constables from ministerial roles, that weakens the ability of the Assembly to choose. Another problem is that you may select someone to be a constable or a mayor because he or she is outstanding in the parish and a good manager, but not necessarily a representative or a policy maker. And the third problem, which also applies to Guernsey, is if you have 12 constables representing the 12 historic parishes, you end up with only one person representing St Helier with 30,000 people and many social problems, and one person representing St Mary's with less than 2,000 people and probably more affluent parish on average. And you would end up with 8 or 9 constables representing traditional farming parishes where the majority of residents would be comparatively well employed in the finance or other sectors. And I think that leads to unrepresentative government. That said, you have to look across to the world's biggest democracy, apart from India, the United States of America. The United States of America has had the same constitution for over 200 years, and they have a House of Representatives, a bicameral system, which accurately reflects population, and a state system which does not. California and Rhode Island have the same representation. And so, in a way, you need a bicameral system to justify constables continuing in the states of Jersey.
I was struck with the conversation I had with the two gentlemen that the potential levels for the public to participate at parish level, various things that are going on, not necessarily that they're very available at the moment, but could be made open to the public.
Yes. I mean, with the Jersey changes, every single constable in the current States Assembly has the right, with no legal bar, and I don't think there should be a legal bar initially, to stand as a states member and be elected for his or her district. And because they were constable, they would surely have an electoral advantage, and good luck to them. And when we changed, some of our Dusain representatives stayed in the States, and 2 of them, Mike O'Hara and Mark Dorey, are still there and are ministers and have significant responsibilities. We still keep the parish roots. In some parishes of the 10, but not all, the deputies meet with the Dusaneers and constables on a monthly basis and have input onto policies and orders before the states. We have also restarted in St Peter Port a parish surgery where the public can meet the 13 elected representatives from the 2 districts of St Peter Port. And it's mixed. We tried it on a weekday night, not so many people. Saturday you usually get an adequate number. I too have had my own surgeries of a disability nature for 7 or 8 times, and they will hopefully restart soon. I know the Cattle parish, which is our west coast, and the Vale parish have lively, lengthy Saturday morning sessions which involve both the Dusain and members of the public. And I believe in some of the country, smaller parishes, the deputies are members of the Dusain simultaneously, or meet with the Dusaneers. And I know Advocate Roger Perrow, who's a new deputy, is having his own surgeries in St Saviour's or other parts of the west, and he has his own significant response. Unfortunately, I think there are some country parishes where the connection between the parish and the Dusain and the elected representatives has declined, and there's a certain breach there.
One of the problems that was we touched on in the discussion I had with the two, if you occupy several 2 or more jobs, you will prevent other people being in those jobs. In other words, you don't get the diversity of representative.
I've known a situation in Guernsey where an extremely able member who was widely regarded and respected and initially very popular took on a significant number of communitarian roles, including working within a cooperative, working for the parish, working as a constable, and working as a deputy minister for 2 departments. And that did lead to a perception that there was a potential, not conflict of interest necessarily, but a difficulty in campaigning for one particular segment of the community. And so holding numerous offices in common can be problematic. And I suppose one is aware especially that if you have a particular parochial profile and you get involved with, say, the planning committee, that can lead to issues.
I think we touched on in a previous conversation about the possibility that the parish officials might get paid at some point in the future. Is that ever likely to happen, do you think?
I don't think there's anything preventing the parish in principle having an EGM calling for payment for the honorary officials and then taking that to the Royal Court for approval. I personally think that the larger parishes, especially St Peter Port, where the responsibilities are onerous, deserve payment not dissimilar to what a backbench states member gets. And I would hope that if Jersey decides to separate the constables ex officio from a seat in the States Chamber, that the constables who are not States members could be given an appropriate fee which would partially reflect the population size of the parish.
There's one issue which is coming back to life in Jersey, which I'll just touch briefly upon. That's the remnants of Lord Carswell's and the Clothier report previously, the role of the Crown officers, the bailiff in particular. Is that raising its head again in Jersey, in Guernsey?
It's not an issue in it's not an issue in Guernsey really, because our bailiffs have been very popular, and so have our law officers and respected people. Our former Chief Minister, Deputy Trott, who's still an active member of the Assembly, has raised one or two technical questions as to whether the law officers can and should be regarded as members of the states, because they certainly are in terms of their social membership of states groups and also their significant involvement in the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association. But of course their salaries are not known to us, but one would suspect that they are higher than states members by some distance. And the technical point was, should their assets be in the register of members' interests, as ours are? Of course, they're not elected, nor do they choose to stand for public office, and they are, strictly speaking, not employed by the States of Guernsey or political members of the States of Guernsey, because they are appointees and servants of Her Majesty the Queen through the Crown and perhaps the Privy Council and the Ministry of Justice. And their appointment comes from that base. And they are, in Guernsey's case, which is different from Jersey, they have a duty and a responsibility which they carry out diligently for the little islands of Sark, which can be challenging at times, and Alderney. And so their role is sophisticated. Where I think it differs significantly from England and Wales is the Attorney General and the Solicitor General in those jurisdictions has a salary which is transparently noticeable. It's not particularly high by senior lawyers' standards, and is a political appointee. And one had the curious spectacle in 2010 of Vera Baird QC, who was, I think, Solicitor General for Gordon Brown's government, not only losing her position when Mr Cameron became Prime Minister, but losing her seat for Redcar, because she was an elected politician, and most law officers in England have been elected politicians. Consequently, their career is partially on the whim of the Chief Minister, Prime Minister rather, and the electorate. That is not true in Guernsey or Jersey. The law officers are in no sense answerable to or appointed by the Chief Minister, the Policy Council of Ministers. That gives them detachment from politics and political manoeuvring, but it also arguably gives them a certain strength and power and position whereby they're not dictated to by the Chief Minister, and they can pursue independent policy, perhaps.
Well, there are many issues we could discuss on this. Of course, law officers tend to be selected from a very small number of those professionals.
They do, but Jersey a few years ago and now Guernsey have broken the mould in appointing women Solicitor Generals. There has been a seminar recently in Guernsey about law, and the view was expressed, which was repeated in the Guernsey press in an article this March, that some of our commercial law firms are not particularly equality-minded in terms of the number of female partners at high level. And I think the law officers are leading the way there, and by definition the law chambers have to focus on areas of social law, children law, environmental law, public law, human rights, criminal law, which is not attractive to our wonderful advocates in the private sector as a generalisation.
Ironically, one of those beasts known as Senator, who will cease to exist if some of the plans go ahead, is actually proposing a Department of Justice for Jersey at the moment, which is quite a substantial reform.
I've for a long time thought that there should be a justice ministry in Guernsey in some shape or form. Whether it should be part of the Home Department's mandate or part of the Policy Council or a separate body is open to a lot of investigation. I can see the need one day for a greater detachment between political and judicial issues, and that might apply to our GREF as well. But it's probably not a priority given the financial and other climates.
We're going to stop there, but if you should happen to be in Jersey within the next month or so, whilst the referendum is building up to its crescendo, we'd be very pleased to hear from you.
Yes.
Thank you much indeed.